Today I'll be talking about my opinions on the Early Access Season 2 wipe that ends in just a couple days. There are timestamps down below, hope you enjoy. This was definitely the most turbulent season of Darker Darker yet. This season started with the reintroduction of plus all attributes on gear and increased additional/true damage from jewelry, which led to a weird situation where, despite being a new wipe, players could pretty quickly gear up to a point where they were stronger than ever. It's even more frustrating when you consider that Iron Mace has performed this exact test multiple times in the past, and every time they've done it, it had to be reverted. The developers unofficially dubbed this season the season of multiclassing, and an incomplete version of that system was introduced a few weeks into the wipe. The original iteration of multiclassing required a huge time investment, which led to most players really disliking it. They eventually tuned this to make it more accessible, but it led to some of the most broken and crazy builds we've ever seen. I've talked about multiclassing in some of my past videos, which I can link in the description, but overall I thought it was a really fun system to change up the meta, but once people optimized their builds, we ended up with most players running all barbarian/fighter perks and skills, which defeats the whole purpose of multiclassing, which was hopefully build diversity. Multiclassing was in the game for less than a month before it was removed, at which point we were left with the same game that we played last wipe, except there was actually less content because the runes were removed. And the last big change they had this season was gear-based matchmaking, which in my opinion is far too simple to be effective and makes lobby manipulation a much larger part of the game. The last thing I want to touch on quickly is that the questing system was heavily nerfed this season. Quests were time-gated and the rewards were much worse since they were capped at epic rarity and had random rolls. Season 1 crafting was too strong, but crafting this season was terrible, which led to the entire questing system being entirely uninteresting to me. The lack of any meaningful progression systems and in-dungeon content led to the player count skydiving far earlier than it did in Early Access Season 1. But the Iron Mace devs have continually hinted at big changes and updates coming with the wipe on June 7th. I have some ideas for what changes and content would bring players back, as well as help retain a new audience. So here's what I would like to see on June 7th. First off, what we really need is just content. Things to actually go do in the dungeon. The things I'm specifically looking for on the wipe are the new Ruins map, the Ice Abyss, and Druid, and maybe some bonus points for new weapons and armor. Secondly, we need more players, which I think will be greatly facilitated by releasing on another launcher. I'm assuming the Epic launch will be announced on June 7th, and I'm really hoping that Steam launches at some point soon. Lastly, we could also use some balance changes, which in my opinion would be the removal of the true damage modifier, nerfing ranged DPS so it's not the best choice in every single situation, and tweaking the scaling curves of attributes to fall off sooner to help close the gear gap. The last thing I want to talk about is how the season rewards shook out this time. They didn't announce the rewards until about 7 days before the season ended, giving people little to no time to decide whether or not they want to push for Demigod. Then, to spit in the faces of everyone who grinded to Demigod early, they greatly reduced the AP entrance cost due to being unable to patch their game effectively. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm referencing how with less than a week left in the season, the game was down for over 24 hours and had to be taken down every day for 4 consecutive days due to game-breaking bugs. Maybe if they actually used their test server, then these things could have been avoided. To improve on this in the future, I think Iron Mace should do the following. Season rewards should be announced at the latest halfway through the season, but ideally they'd be announced when the season starts. The AP entrance fees and calculations should be unchanged for the duration of a season. Rewards should be based off of peak rank, not end of season rank. And like I was just talking about, I think Iron Mace really needs to use the test server to test all hotfixes for at least a week before they're released onto the main server. Maybe adding some cosmetic rewards for time spent in dungeon on the test server would help get the player count up. I'm optimistic that Iron Mace can course correct and make the changes necessary to make this game have a second wave of popularity. I'm just hoping that that comes before the majority of the player base forgets about this game and moves on. Gamers these days are very fickle and the industry moves very quickly. Meanwhile, Iron Mace has been moving extremely slowly. That's enough for now, though. Let me know what changes RMAs can make to get you back into the dungeons. Take it easy.